Welcome to Alternatify, the channel where we delve into the fascinating realm of what-ifs and explore the alternative realities that could have been. Today, we embark on a journey to a world profoundly different from our own. Imagine a timeline where one pivotal moment in history simply didn't happen. What if the glittering promise of gold never lured millions to the shores of California? What if James Marshall, on that fateful day in 1848, had simply missed the shimmering flakes in the American River? The ripple effects of such an oversight would be monumental, touching every facet of economic, social, and environmental life. Prepare to explore a world where empires shifted, borders were redrawn, and modern life as we know it took an entirely different trajectory. This is the story of a California unmined and the world we lost. Our history books tell us of James Marshall's fateful discovery on January 24, 1848, at Sutter's Mill in Coloma. That glint of gold in the mill race ignited a fever that reshaped a continent and, indeed, the world. But what if that glint was never seen? What if the gold was dismissed as fool's pyrite, or simply remained hidden beneath the riverbed for decades longer? This single, seemingly minor divergence sets our alternative timeline in motion. Without the immediate lure of instant riches, California's population growth would have been dramatically slower. The explosive transformation from a sparsely populated frontier to a bustling state would simply not occur. San Francisco, instead of becoming a global metropolis almost overnight, would remain a smaller, more modest port city. Its growth would be organic, tied to regional trade rather than a sudden influx of fortune seekers. The rapid infrastructure development, the roads, the railroads, the burgeoning cities that characterized our timeline would be significantly delayed. The urgent need to transport people and goods to the goldfields would be absent. Economically, the absence of rapid wealth accumulation in California would shift the nation's financial center of gravity. The East Coast would retain its dominance for far longer, or perhaps new economic hubs would emerge elsewhere in the burgeoning nation. The growth of related industries, from agriculture to shipping and manufacturing, would also be profoundly delayed in the West. The immediate capital injection and demand spurred by the gold rush would be missing. Socially, California's ethnic and cultural makeup would evolve very differently. The intense, often volatile mix of populations, Americans, Chinese, Mexicans, Europeans, drawn by gold would not converge so rapidly. This would likely lead to less intense social upheaval and fewer immediate conflicts arising from such diverse populations clashing over resources and opportunities. The melting pot would simmer, not boil. Crucially, the immediate displacement and violence against Native American populations, often exacerbated by the gold rush, might be less severe. Their lands would still be encroached upon, but perhaps at a slower, less devastating pace. Environmentally, the impact would be profound. The widespread deforestation, the destructive hydraulic mining, and the rampant pollution of rivers would be largely averted. California's pristine landscapes would remain largely untouched. A more sustainable approach to resource management might have naturally evolved over time. The immediate, desperate scramble for gold would not have dictated such destructive practices. In this alternate reality, California would evolve at a slower, more deliberate, and arguably more organic pace. Its development would be a gradual unfolding rather than a sudden explosion. The Central Valley, with its fertile soils, would likely become the nation's breadbasket much sooner and more prominently. Agriculture, not mining, would be the undisputed king of the Californian economy. The focus would be squarely on farming, ranching, and viticulture, shaping the economy and culture of the state for generations. This agricultural heritage would define its identity. San Francisco would still be a port, but its growth would be modest, primarily focused on trade with Asia and the Pacific Rim. It would be a gateway, not a gold-fueled boomtown. Los Angeles, too, would grow slowly, its expansion intrinsically tied to agricultural development and the eventual gradual extension of railroad lines. It would not become a sprawling metropolis until much later. Politically, California's admission to the Union would likely be delayed. Without the gold rush to accelerate its population and economic significance, its statehood would not be as urgent a national priority. This slower integration would mean less pronounced political influence in the early years of its statehood. The balance of power in the US Senate, particularly regarding the slavery debate, might have been subtly but significantly different. The social fabric would still be diverse, but populations would arrive in smaller numbers and integrate with different dynamics. The intense racial and ethnic tensions that flared during the gold rush might be less immediate or severe. Environmental preservation would be a natural consequence of this slower development. The majestic redwood forests, the pristine rivers, and the abundant wildlife would be better preserved, spared from the immediate threat of destructive mining practices. The cultural evolution of this alternate California would be rooted deeply in its agricultural heritage. It would emphasize community, tradition, and a connection to the land, rather than the transient, individualistic pursuit of wealth. Arts, literature, and music would reflect this slower pace, focusing on the beauty of nature and the rhythms of rural life. The frantic energy of the gold rush would be replaced by a more contemplative spirit. Of course, even in this alternate California, challenges would persist. Economic disparities, social inequalities, and environmental concerns would still arise, but their forms and manifestations would be distinctly different. The absence of the California gold rush would send profound ripples across the entire United States. The nation's economic growth would be slower, delaying its ascent to global power status. Westward expansion and industrialization would take a different path, or at least be significantly delayed. The immediate impetus to conquer the continent and exploit its resources would be diminished. The global economy would be reshaped. The sudden influx of gold from California fueled international trade and finance in our timeline. Without it, global economic evolution would be slower, and different centers of power and influence might emerge. The rise of industries like shipping and manufacturing, which benefited immensely from the gold rush's demands, would be delayed or altered in their development. The political landscape of the world would also be altered. A less economically powerful and slower-growing United States would exert less pronounced influence on the world stage. Other nations might play more significant roles in global affairs, particularly in the mid to late 19th century. The course of Pacific Rim colonization and trade would undoubtedly follow a different trajectory. Socially and culturally, the world would experience less pronounced global migration and cultural exchange. The gold rush was a powerful magnet, drawing people from every corner of the globe. The slower and less pervasive spread of American culture, which often followed the economic and political influence of the United States, would also be a consequence. Globally, the environmental impact would be less severe. The intense exploitation of natural resources and ecosystem degradation, driven in part by the demands of a rapidly industrializing world fueled by gold, would be mitigated. The pace and focus of technological advancement would undoubtedly be different in this unmined world. Innovation often follows necessity and economic opportunity. Transportation, for instance, would see significant changes. The Transcontinental Railroad, a monumental undertaking in our timeline, was heavily spurred by the need to connect the East with the gold-rich West. Its construction would be delayed, or its route might be entirely different. The development of other technologies like steamships, which were crucial for transporting people and goods to California, would also be impacted. Their evolution might be slower or directed towards different priorities. Communication technologies would also feel the shift. The telegraph, vital for connecting distant parts of the nation, might see slower development without the urgent need to communicate with a booming, isolated California. The evolution of modern communication, from early telegraphs to the internet and mobile phones, is a complex web of interconnected developments. A different 19th century could lead to a very different 21st. Consider the origins of Silicon Valley. Its rise was intrinsically linked to California's unique economic and social conditions, including its early entrepreneurial spirit and later, its defense industry. Without the gold rush's foundational impact, its development might be hindered or even entirely prevented. Instead, this alternate timeline might see an acceleration of sustainable technologies. With a slower, more agricultural focus and less immediate resource exploitation, innovation might be directed towards efficiency, conservation, and long-term ecological balance. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of this alternative history lies in the human cost, the lost dreams and the unwritten stories. For Native American tribes, the immediate displacement and violence they faced would be less severe. This might have allowed for the preservation of more cultures, languages, and traditional ways of life, altering a tragic chapter of history. The countless individuals who flocked to California, driven by the dream of striking it rich, would pursue different paths. Their lives, their opportunities, and the stories they wrote would be entirely different. The social inequalities that arose from the gold rush, particularly the rapid accumulation of wealth by some and the exploitation of many others, would be less pronounced in California. The gap between rich and poor might not be as stark. The lives of marginalized and exploited individuals, the Chinese laborers, the Mexican miners, the women who sought opportunity in a rough-and-tumble world, would have been profoundly different. Their historical narratives, often overlooked, would be entirely rewritten. In summary, a California without the gold rush would be a vastly different place. It would be more agricultural, with slower city growth, and its natural environment would be far better preserved. The United States would experience slower economic growth and a different, more gradual path of westward expansion. Its rise to global prominence would be delayed. Globally, the economy would be reshaped, the political landscape altered, and the technological path would diverge significantly from our own. Most importantly, the human experience would be transformed. Different dreams would be pursued, different stories would be told, and different realities would unfold for millions of people. This exploration of what-ifs highlights the profound complexities of history. It reminds us how a single pivotal event, or its absence, can send ripples across time, shaping entire continents and the lives of countless individuals. We've glimpsed a world unmined, a California forever changed by the absence of that fateful discovery. It's a world that offers a stark contrast to our own, prompting us to consider the true cost and benefit of historical events. What are your thoughts on a California without the gold rush? How do you imagine its culture, its people, its future? Share your insights in the comments below. And if you have ideas for other historical what-ifs you'd like us to explore, let us know. Your suggestions fuel our journey through alternative realities. If you enjoyed this journey through an unmined world, please like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to the Alternatify channel for more thought-provoking explorations. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep imagining the possibilities.